Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is Anissa Avon and I am with Dan Raphael. Hi, Dan.
Hi, good afternoon, Anissa.
Hello. I'm really pleased to introduce everyone that is coming on our webinar today to Dan. Our topic, very timely topic, is the resilient leader. And Dan has some personal experience to share with us. And so this topic is going to be, our talk today is a little bit different than some of the format that we've had in the past. And what I mean by that in the past of this webinar is that I asked Dan to share his personal story. And I'm not going to set that up for you except to say this is going to be a meaningful use of your afternoon. So I want to say thank you for joining us. So as we begin, the first thing I want to do is just say hello, welcome, and say thank you to our sponsors. We're very pleased to have a few sponsors helping us put on this summit. One is the Whitmarsh Consulting Group. David Whitmarsh and his team are in Canada and locked down just like the rest of us. And David and his group specialize in human resources, information technology consulting, and multi-channel marketing strategy, including emails, blogs, research projects, white papers, etc. So reach out to David if he and his crew can be of support. The other sponsor I want to say thank you to, and I have a lot of gratitude for Insperity for their support of the work that we're doing. In that, Insperity has been gracious enough to offer a free HR financial analysis report and debrief for anyone who joins us throughout the summit. And if you've been on one of these webinars with me already, then please forgive me as I share with you a little bit of the details on this. It's kind of a big deal. They are offering this HR budget analysis. And one of the reasons why they're offering that is because that right now we know that this time of chaos, this time of crazy change like we've never seen before, means that a lot of HR departments are going to be turned upside down, and their budgets and their goals and their plans for 2020 and beyond may have to be completely changed and start over. And so this HR budget analysis gives you the opportunity to have some feedback and at no obligation. So check that out at turnkeycoachingsolutions.net/HR report. A little bit about me. My name is Anissa Avon, and I'm the CEO of TurnKey Coaching and Development Solutions. We are a enterprise learning and development coaching, training, OD consulting, and HR IT consulting firm. We have executive coaches and trainers in every major metropolitan area in the United States and key hubs globally. But what I really want to share with you is that about 10 days ago, when we realized that this craziness was going to be difficult on all of us, and it was really going to change the 2020 in our memories forever, I went to my team and I said, what are we going to do? What can we do? And how can we help? And we all settled on, we don't know what we're going to do. We don't know what we can do, but we do know how we can help. And how we can help is through this summit. In a matter of about 2 days, we put together this Leading in a Crisis, actionable business and HR strategies for navigating crisis and change. We've put together about 40 speakers, only 22 of which I think are actually up on the portal. So do visit that website again, turnkeycoachingsolutions.net/leading in a crisis, and check out our other speakers. So I'm so grateful that we are introducing Dan Raphael to you guys today. Dan served as a naval officer and helicopter pilot for over 20 years. And I have to say, Dan, before I tell him about the rest of you, that if you ask any little boy what they want to be when they grow up, I would suspect that about 3 out of every 10 of them will say a helicopter pilot. So that's pretty cool.
Just don't ask my son. He wants to be a garbage man. That's okay.
I think that's awesome. That's funny. So he's been a leader of or a member of countless teams in various scenarios all over the world. In 2010, as you guys may have heard, a devastating earthquake ravaged Haiti, and Dan was sent to lead a team operating helicopters off of a Navy hospital ship to provide relief and suffering to suffering Haitians. He faced the daily challenge of leading his team while adapting to the ever-changing needs of the mission. And when I asked Dan about potentially presenting in this leading in a crisis, we talked a little bit about what may our clients need most, and we talked about resilience. And as you hear Dan's story, you're going to understand why this topic is different than the other ones that we've put on, because Dan knows firsthand what it takes to be a resilient leader. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Dan. Share with us what we're going to learn today and a little bit about yourself, and take it away.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you for the introduction. I'm very humbled to be able to share my story. This is a very important story to me and to my family, so I really appreciate the opportunity to do so. I really want to turn this into more than just a fireside story with s'mores. I really want the listeners to be able to glean some useful information as they potentially go through their own crises right now related to this current situation or future situations that they may face. So just briefly, my story is I was, like you mentioned, a helicopter pilot for about 20 years. I generally served on small teams. So I wasn't on the aircraft carrier. I was on little detachments with about 30 people and a couple helicopters. So leading up to this big earthquake in Haiti in 2010, the year prior, I was actually assigned as leader of a team in Naples, Italy, because there's a ship out of there that we get on and we fly and do all kinds of things in Europe. Well, just so happens during my time there, the ship was in the shipyards being repaired. So I got a really good deal. I got to eat great Italian food. We never got on the ship and went anywhere. I traveled all over. It was fantastic.
Nice gig. Mm-hmm.
My team was all very senior, and the mission was very clear. So you see the foreshadowing where this is going, right? So after 7 months there, I was sent back to Virginia. My time was up. Somebody else took my place, and that was great. And the first night back, my wife and I were at dinner, and I got a call from my squadron, and they said, you know, I don't know if you watched the news, but there's been a big earthquake in Haiti, and we're going to go help them. And we looked at all the different people that can go, and you're going to do it. Okay. So 4 days later, I was out again. The time leading up to that, those 4 days, and the time ever since then for the next 3 months was on a level of 1 through 10 stress, basically 10. There was a lot of uncertainty. It was a very political mission because many countries were participating, many non-government organizations like Doctors Without Borders and Red Cross and things. It was very visible. We had a lot of bosses, a lot of interest in what we were doing. So it was wild. So I was given a new team of about 30 people, 2 helicopters, and we got on the Comfort. For those of you watching the news, you see it out there in New York now, helping the people there with coronavirus. So off we go, and there was really uncertain what we were going to do. Just to give everyone some context, Haiti construction of buildings is poor. So a lot of buildings fell on people. And so a lot of the missions we did were helping people that had gangrenous limbs, quite frankly, that were trapped, all kinds of things, horrible stuff. Get them the help they needed, and then ultimately provide supplies for the other folks that were still in distress. So other than that, it was real fuzzy what we were going to do. So we were on our way. If we could, why don't we just go to the slide of question? It's kind of a softball lob, but I think it sets the tone of leadership. Let's see. I'm not going to speak to the slides too much. I'd rather just talk to the audience. I think that's the best way to learn. But this is a real easy one. So when you're a leader or you're a follower and you're watching a leader, what is the leader supposed to provide? Any of these things? It's easy. It's all of these things. When you're the leader, you have to provide the support, the direction, and the stability for the team to be effective. Now that's easier said than done, much easier said than done. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. So we'll go to the next slide, but maybe we'll just pull the slides down and talk.
Perfect. And for folks that are on the call with us, don't hesitate to ask questions as we go. Dan's going to share his story. I'm going to ask some questions around, for example, I've already got questions about how you manage that level 10 stress, etc. Don't answer that now. I know you're going to get to it, or you can, but I know you're also going to get to it.
I'll get to it. I will say it's a really great diet plan, like 20-something pounds lost. It was amazing. Sure.
Bad diet.
We'll get to it. So just to build on a little bit more on the previous slide, when we talk about the role of a leader during a crisis situation, during a charged environment, everyone's looking to that leader to exude confidence. And boy, is that tough when that's not how you feel on the inside. But just know that that's being expected and desired of you, that you need to exude that confidence. You need to provide the direction. You need to provide the sanity when everything else is not sane and not calm. That's your job now, is to provide that. And you have to be compassionate too, which is also difficult, particularly for me. I tend, as my stress level gets ramped up, I tend to become more on the scale of a dictator than a team member. And that's something I have to watch. And each person is going to have their own challenges with exuding all these qualities under fire. Team members need to know what direction the team is going in. And if you don't have a direction, like in Haiti, we had multiple directions, you have to kind of come up with one. And I'll talk about that briefly as far as a vision. People need to know, how are they performing? How are they doing? Are they serving the team? Are they Are they valued? And you need to let them know that. You need to be aware of that. I was so overwhelmed in my role. This is something that I got kind of a hard education on, and I try to remember it all the time. When you're the leader, everyone is keying in on everything about you. Everything you say, your facial expressions, the way you handle news, the way you carry yourself. So in a way, you kind of become a little bit of a character actor. At least I did, because that sort of stuff goes right through me. I don't have a great filter. I do now, but I didn't then. And I had to learn that very quickly, that my actions and I telegraphed those very clearly, and people ran with them. And I needed to control that. And so I had to learn that. I'd like to talk about vision. And I'm going to anchor down on this a little, because I have a little vignette I'd like to talk about. So vision, I kind of touched on it briefly. Your team needs a vision. And if nobody's providing one, then you need to write that vision and you need to present it. That vision has to be, you take in the inputs you have and you make the vision you can. And it has to be flexible and firm, which are somewhat, well, how do you do both of those? Well, it's a balancing act. It truly is. You can't be so inflexible with your vision that new circumstances and new developments don't cause you to modify it, but it has to be sturdy enough to withstand the pressures that are applied to you. One thing I always say is, if you don't like my vision, hey, that's okay. You just signed up to write version 2.0, right? I'm going to write it until someone supersedes me, and then congratulations, here's my pen, and now you can start writing it. And that's what happened to me. So our vision, I know you have a question, but let me end on a vision, what ours was, and then we'll chat and I'll do my story. So my vision, as I mentioned, it was very political. There was a big political element. We felt like the world was watching us. There was a lot of pressure coming towards us. And so I decided with the team that our vision was, when confronted with a decision, whether we would do something that was politically important or necessary, or career smart or important or necessary, if confronted with that and something that was going to help a Haitian, we would never fail to help that person. The politics be damned, the career be damned, and I know you have a question, but that was put to the test with me. So,
well, I think that you answered it right there, and part of it was, how do you juggle the competing priorities? And I know that our leaders in the workplace right now are struggling with that. Part of the priority, if they're a leader, is maintaining the sanity for the front lines, maintaining confidence for their employees. But I also think there's a level of vulnerability that has to be displayed if you want your people to trust you. How do you juggle that?
Mm, that's a tough one. I mean, that really comes down to character, I think. It really does. And what a team ultimately takes on the character of its leader. It really does. So I don't know if I can write an answer for that. I think you do your best. I think you do not just your best as a leader, but a little bit to where it hurts.
Yeah.
Because any of these situations that you get in where you're really truly challenged and taxed, it's not going to be comfortable. I mean, it's going to be the gym workout that you're like, oh, I shouldn't have taken this class because that's the real hard one. But you're able to do it.
Yeah.
It just isn't comfy anymore. You can't just like slack on the bike or whatever you thought you were going to do. You're really being pushed. So I think when you find yourself in a situation like what you're describing, you have to dig deep. You have to go farther than you thought, and you have to take some risks. You do.
And one of the things that you said is, the vision that you had was first what really matters. And if we have to choose between pleasing something or someone politically or the well-being of a Haitian, the Haitian is our priority. That individual, that human being is our priority. And therein lies the vulnerability. Your vision that you shared with your team, and your team said, we can get behind that, had built in vulnerability, which meant, don't care if this ruins our career. What I care about is what I'm really here to do.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's a really good segue for how that was put to the test for me personally. So just to give a broad perspective, in Haiti, all these different organizations had come into town and were treating injured Haitians wherever they were, like out in the country, away from Port-au-Prince, away from the city, sometimes in the city, at whatever, tent medical facilities, whatever they had. And we were trying to get all these Haitian folks onto the Navy ships. There were various, to include ours, and get them real treatment. And there were also some hospitals of varying capabilities within Haiti themselves being run by different groups. So one particular day, I was actually flying the helicopter, and I was called to a grass like hut with a bunch of Navy doctors and medical stuff. And they said, we need you to come get some patients urgently right now. So we went over there and we landed. And so what we found out is they needed us to take 2 infants that were imminently going to die. And none of the ships we called around, they couldn't take any more patients. They were saturated. And so the doctors told us, they said, take these 2 babies to a hospital right outside the city. There are Israeli doctors there that can help. There's a big grass area right next to the hospital. You can land in it and give them the babies, and that will be that. So I said, okay. So they put one of the babies on board, and they told us that she had hemorrhaging of the brain, and that the pressure was going to kill her if we didn't get her going. Okay. Then we're waiting for the next one, and waiting. And finally the doctor tells my crewman, you just go. Just go. We know we got the one. This one we can't wait. Okay, so we go. So we take off and we go to the hospital where the Israeli doctors are. And so remember, I mentioned the construction was poor. So now people were afraid to be in buildings. So they were in tents in our landing zone. And so here's my moment of vision. I have a baby who's going to die on my helicopter. I can't go back because I can't treat her. I can't go to the ships because they're full. And I can't land because the people are they're afraid to go in the buildings. So I'll cut to it. So what we did is we came to a 100-foot hover over these buildings in downtown Port-au-Prince. And we had a winch with cable, and we lowered down one of my guys with the baby to the Israelis who took her. and it was wild. And it was immediately after we did it, it was exhilarating, and then we knew we did something big.
Yeah.
It's going to be something.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was what it was. And back on the ship later, I found out that there were reports that we had blown over some stuff and caused fires, and there was this big political hoopla. And I received a call from my squadron that said, yeah, the admiral's going to talk to you tomorrow, and you're probably going to come home. Okay. So I went over in the morning to talk to him, and I waited around all day. And I thought, well, this is my last day in Haiti, and I hope they pick someone nice to run the team. And so he sat me down, and he had a conversation that I really appreciate. You know, he said, you operated within the bounds that you thought were correct. And I'm telling you that they were not. And so now you have your vision, right? So that was my vision, and now I have a vision that's been modified. So I understood that, and I was sent back to continue my job. And so that, to me, has many applications, and hopefully to the people watching also. But could I have been fired? Oh, yeah. Would that have had upward mobility in my career? Yeah. Would I have lived with it? Yeah, because as I sit here today talking to you, there's a 10-year-old Haitian girl out there. She lives. So that's okay with me.
Absolutely. Dan, what you're sharing with us about resilience is also about standing for your values in a time of crisis. It's about resourcefulness, even at the expense, and resourcefulness in alignment with your values, even at the expense of something that could, frankly, cost you greatly. And really great leaders learn how to make those decisions that are tough like that.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. I think as sitting here, it's very easy to, oh, well, if I was in that situation, it makes for a really great vignette, but it's tough when it's real time. And I'm sure people listening to this have had their moments.
Yeah.
And when you're going through it, when you're telling it afterwards, you know how the story ends, right? You're watching the movie for the second time, but as you're going through it, it's no joke. And that's why you really have to be grounded. And I think, so I spoke about being grounded in your vision. I would like to talk about trust, because you mentioned that a little bit ago, and that's huge. And I would like to actually make some recommendations of things I did with regard to trust that I think are applicable and I think will serve you well if you use them. When you're overtasked and things are out of control, probably like now, you have to trust your people, right? You have to telework, and you have to trust they're doing the right thing. You have to trust they're acting on your behalf, doing what they're supposed to do. And if you're communicating your vision with them, they should be. I would recommend default to trust with people. Don't default to distrust. Default to trust. That's your just toggle. If someone earns your distrust, let them earn your distrust. Don't go into a situation, any situation where you're distrustful of your team, and then they're going to earn their way out of it. I don't recommend it. Default to trust, they will feel that. They will know that they're trusted. And 9 times out of 10, if not more, they will rise to it, and they will surprise you. And bear in mind, in the government and military sector, sometimes that's not very present. The punishment for the magnitude of punishment for getting something wrong is often larger than the magnitude of when you get it right. But nevertheless, I stand by it. Default to trust.
In our situation right now with managers, a lot of teams have half the team that they had a week ago. A lot of companies are teetering on, can we make it through? HR is certainly turned upside down. And then the folks we have to manage are no longer next to us. They are remote, or they're having to work with their children, or uh, their grandparents, or and they're dealing with the illnesses of, sickness of family. How do you retain that trust when there are times, when your team, for example, really does need your trust, and they're going to get it done, and they're showing you through the performance that they deliver every day. And then there are times when your team is not earning your trust, that the work that they're doing falls short, or and that they could be doing more. How do you manage that as a leader?
The first word I thought of when you were describing that situation of the pendulum of trust is consistency. Consistency. If you're a Hallmark card on everything anyone ever does, then what are you good for?
Yeah.
So when people don't meet the expectations that you've clearly set, either you didn't clearly set them, so shame on you, and take note of that and fix that about yourself, or they didn't meet them. And it doesn't mean you have to exercise the nuclear option on them. It just means you have to let them know. And when people know that about you, that, hey, good things please me, and I'll let you know that. And when you're not your best, I'm going to let you know that too. I think that, isn't that trust? Isn't that truthfulness? It can be compassionate, but it can be honest too. And I think that's the answer.
I hadn't thought of it like that, but consistency does build trust. If I can count on you to be a person of your word as my manager, I'm going to be more likely to give you more of what I'm capable of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So we have a question. Jack's asked, in difficult moments, were you alone, or could you draw on someone else for help and assistance? And what was that person's role?
Okay, I need that individual tested for premonition. That was my next slide. Is your confidant. So the answer, to get to the answer first, I had confidants, and I still maintain confidants. And honestly, having a confidant is against my nature. I'm inherently kind of an inwardly focused, inwardly driven person. I don't share naturally, so it's an effort for me to have a confidant. But I had confidants in Haiti that kept me sane and were just invaluable. So I mentioned one of the individuals on my team in Haiti. I knew him in Italy. He was there for a couple months on the tail end when I was just beginning my time in Italy. So we had some familiarity. So going into the Haiti situation, I thought, this is really going to be my confidant. He's a little more seasoned, and we know each other. We have a history. And he actually didn't turn out to be that way for me, which I was kind of sad. And then one of the other members of my team, who's a more junior person, who I didn't know previously, had no impression of, really rose to that and became that for me. And it was wonderful. And he and I are good friends to this day. And then even more importantly, I had confidants that were part of the mission, but outside of my team. And that was valuable. I guess the parallel for some folks might be someone in your industry, someone, but not in your company, someone that's kind of on a parallel track as you, but separate. That was so valuable for me to be able to bounce off ideas or my thoughts or my frustrations with someone who got the context, but couldn't really get back to my team, or, it was in confidence. And that's how I got through it. And it was wonderful.
Help me understand the situation. Had you not had a confidant, how might have things been different? When you say it was so valuable, what would have happened if you hadn't have had a confidant, do you think?
Well, by my own estimation and by several other sources, I would declare that team a success. So all the ingredients that went into the pot to make that dish made a success. The ingredients of confidence would not have been added. The ingredients of vision probably wouldn't have been added. There would have been things missing. And would it have been a dish that you could eat? I don't know, maybe. But all the things that went into it made it a success. And I think having a confidant, having actually really three close ones, made it come together and be a success. So I think it would have been, to answer your question, Anissa, it would have been unsuccessful. That's what would have happened.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. And, I think that we as leaders, especially if we've been doing this for some time, oftentimes rely on our own decision making. We rely on ourselves so much. We have other people rely on us so much that we neglect the fact that we too are human beings. We have emotional days. We have days of doubt and fear and uncertainty. And without an outlet of a peer, a confidant, someone that can support us, we are missing, potentially and maybe even catastrophically missing, an important ingredient to get through a time of crisis like this.
Absolutely. The other thing that having this valuable experience for me of leaning on confidence, it cut both ways, because going forward from Haiti for the rest of my life, I now have my eyes open to people in that situation, in a situation where they're going through a tough time, and I sense that they could use a confidant, or it's just apparent because they kind of seek it out in me. And I try to be very compassionate and receptive towards that, because I know how valuable that is. And it's not just every person that is a good fit for you as a confidant. There are special people that you have that connection, or you make that connection with. And I try very hard to be available to that experience for people that are going through it.
Wow, very good. I know that you have more to share, so tell me if this is the right time for this question. I want to talk a little bit about character and the importance of that in being a resilient leader. And in my estimation, character is oftentimes something you have, but can someone in a moment build character in such a way as to rise to the occasion of helping others navigate through a crisis like this? And if they can build character like that more fully in a moment like this, what does that take, and how can we support that?
I think character can be built in a situation like what we're going through now. I don't know if it's linear, but I think it's your character build is in proportion to the experience happening. So over your life, I think you're building character all along the way, but it's not just some line. I mean, sometimes you have tough things, and I think for the most part, those tough things build a spike of character, but it doesn't come back down. It just comes up. And there's your character. You have more and more and more, and tough times just keep adding to your ability to withstand further tough times and to make the right decisions, lead teams, whatever it is that you need to do in those tough times. So I think when you have a situation like Haiti or like coronavirus right now, those are really tough times that are met with development of character, definitely.
And for leaders, let's say that they themselves are resilient, but they're wanting to help their team become more resilient, become more resourceful. What does a leader do to support their team members in being resilient in the middle of this?
I think the number one thing you can ever do in training, when it's personal training like that, where you're mentoring, is live it. Be the example. Sounds very simple, but that's the top thing. If they see you living what it is you're aspiring to create in them, or to enhance in them, that's the most important thing. And that again goes back to consistency. You can't just show a certain side of you. They'll see all sides. Eventually they'll see all sides. So you have to be consistent and lead. I mean, we always talk about leadership. Oh, leadership, what does that really, like, boil it? You're leading people by example, largely. And that, I think, is the most important thing. Beyond that, I mean, I think you get into technique. Yeah. And I could tell you some things from my experience, but it might not be applicable to everybody.
Well, the key words here that I've taken notes on so far, consistency, character, vision, model the way, lead by example. Um, would you share with us, you know, when you were in Haiti and you had many moments of testing your character, testing your resolve to the vision, just even testing your own resilience. You mentioned when we first started talking that every day for the 3 months you were there, it was a level 10 stress. How did, how does anyone manage that? How did you manage that?
It didn't feel like there was really a binary decision. You one foot in front of the other kind of thing. And part of it is when you're part of a team, you really don't entertain the idea of letting them down. I think there's been a lot of talk on my part this afternoon about how I'm directing energy or communication or vision down, but there was so much I was receiving in return. And I think that's what kept me going is the two-way energy, and not wanting to let my team down kept me going as an individual.
Well, go ahead.
I do think there's one thing missing from your list, the word compassion.
Yeah.
I mentioned it earlier in context of compassion for your team. How about compassion for yourself? If you just get the Cliff's Notes of this talk, you think, oh, this guy just hit it out of the park. I make mistakes all the time. I made mistakes earlier today. I'll make them tomorrow and a week from Thursday. I made mistakes in Haiti. But you have to take those as learning opportunities. And even your team, if you're honest with them and you have that open channel, they'll accept your flaws as you accept theirs. They may call you on it. They may be consistent with you as well. Mine were. And that's okay. You need that. But allow yourself the ability to grow. And we grow when we make mistakes, hopefully. So compassion.
Yeah. Well, what about those mistakes when you're in the middle of it? I know that particularly in some cultures, acknowledging mistakes is not a thing.
Yeah.
You don't call out your own stuff that you do wrong. But in a situation where you're in a crisis and the mission depends on trust from your team, what's your go-to there? When you're a resilient leader and you're expecting your people to be resilient, what's your go-to about accepting your own shortcomings or sharing those vulnerabilities or owning your mistakes?
It's tough. One thing I think of is, not to get political, but we see how polarizing the news can be these days. Can you think of how undermining it would be to some of these stories if a reporter said, so-and-so did this and then they made a mistake, and that person said, you're right, I made a mistake and I learned from it. Here's Tom with the weather. What would you even do with that? Because you've addressed
I'd vote for that is what I would do.
you can kind of relate to a person that is a human being that's out there trying to do their best. I mean, you see a little bit of yourself in that, hopefully. So that's what I tried to do is when I made errors, I didn't try to cover them up. I said, hey, that probably wasn't the best idea. I'll try to do better if I encounter something like that again, or just be honest with it.
Owned it.
People are more understanding than I think we give them credit for. We are.
Yeah.
We're more understanding than probably people give us credit for.
And
They'll understand.
we learned about neuro leadership this morning in a talk on neuro leadership and Corona, of all things. And one of the things that we learned that a human needs, especially during a time of crisis, is relatedness. And that conversation we just had about owning your mistakes, accepting it, I made a mistake and I learned from it, feels real to me. Feels like I can relate to that person, to that leader. Dan, something I want to ask you about is you also had experiences with leaders in the field that made terrible decisions, that were not good leaders, that didn't have the same level of success. What did they do different or wrong?
Somewhat dangerous territory, right? Because it's going to be my assessment. So I hate to be a disclaimer, but one of the things I notice when I find a leader that I think is ineffectual, is they seem to be wanting everyone to fall in behind them and march to their beat, as opposed to, I took a perspective, and I still do. I don't need to be the expert in any particular given thing. Generally, I need to enable my team to be the experts. I need to remove the barriers that are preventing them from being the great team members that they are. And that doesn't mean that maybe I am more technically adept in certain areas or others, or have more experience. But by and large, I take the perspective that I am there to facilitate their greatness. And the leadership that I see that is subpar is where the team is there to serve their greatness.
I am writing that down. This is going to be a minute. I have some notes to take. I am there to facilitate their greatness. And the ineffectual leaders, by observation, are those who believe the team is to serve them as opposed to them serving their team. So in essence, the servant leadership approach is really appropriate right now, especially in this time.
I agree, yes. Eloquently put.
I am just reflecting what you have shared. So what else do we need to know about being a resilient leader during this time?
I think the things that I talked about, if you have as many of them under control as you can, meaning you have a vision, meaning you are, whether you had time to establish trust with your team or not, just plant the flag today. I decide to trust you all. Go. You don't have to earn it. I just trust you. And then someone maybe falls off that wagon. We'll see. Decide to communicate effectively. Decide to distill the chaos into a usable routine format as best you can for your folks and enable them to be great. If you have a foundation, then the storms, you can weather them. If you have no foundation, good luck to you. Your house might get blown down when the storm hits. And I say that like you have all this time to prepare. I had 4 days less. So you do what you can. You do what you can. And would you wish for more time and resources? Always, always. Certainly, many of us teleworking wish we'd set up perhaps other systems, perhaps other networks, but this is what we got, right? So I think you do the best to make as many things stable as you can for you and for your people, and then you'll be better able to be resilient and handle the things that come your way that you can't predict.
Very good. So resilience is also about doing your best to provide stability, even in an unstable environment.
Yes, absolutely, especially in an unstable environment. Because for me, remember, I came from Italy. Anybody could have done that, right? Eat pizza and hang out. But the challenge and what ultimately became the challenge for my entire Navy career was thrust on me, and it was much more challenging. So, this gets into a little bit of a bumper sticker territory, but embrace it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're fortunate in your life to get a challenge that you can test your mettle. If I had only had Italy, I would have a different view on my career.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge, but it's a privilege to be able to lead under duress.
Well, this has been a privilege today. Anyone that's on the webinar with us, if you have questions, please feel free to ask Dan. Dan, I'm taking away so much from our conversation, and I know that others will too find this conversation and what you shared meaningful for them. How can folks get a hold of you, get in touch with you? And then I also know that you are have a giveaway that some lucky 3 people, I believe you said, are going to receive. And I want you to tell people about that and then make sure that people know how to get a hold of you.
Okay, sure. Well, second question first, I suppose. I am giving away. I guess we have a method of doing the giveaway at the end of the series. 3 30-minute sessions as your confidant. I enjoyed the role. I continue to enjoy the role, and I do it now in my own profession. So I'll be giving 3 of those away to some lucky folks. And also, there's my contact information. And if you would like to email me is best, but I will pick up my phone. But I have a 4-year-old, so sometimes the phone represents a threat. So email is not a bad way to go. So,
Very good.
I would love to, even if it's something that it's just a question that didn't get addressed or something you'd like me to elaborate on. Happy to do it. We're really happy to do it. Please just email me.
Excellent.
If you call me, you'll get background noise.
Excellent. Sure. Yeah, well, I think that's with all of us right now. So I want to say thank you, everyone, for being here. This Leading in a Crisis, Actionable Business and HR Strategies for Navigating Crisis and Change. Do spread the word if you have found your time with us today and with Dan meaningful and helpful. And check out the talks that are coming on every single day. I also want to mention that my team and I have put together a Name Your Own Price outplacement coaching or retained leaders program. We did not choose free because free has no value, but it is still working with senior level career coaches and outplacement specialists, helping your teams that you're having to furlough or let go of, manage the chaos and get through and hopefully find other employment if in fact you're not able to take them back. So do reach out if we may be of service or assistance to you. You can also learn more at turnkeycoachingsolutions.net/NYOP, stands for Name Your Own Price, Outplacement. So thank you again, Dan. This has been I'm going to go home, or I'm at home, but I'm going to read my notes again because I really, really took away a lot from today, and really want to honor you for sharing your story, because I don't know that if you do that this often enough, but it was very valuable.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for the opportunity. It's a very meaningful time in my life. So thank you for the opportunity to share that today.
My pleasure. And thank you, Dan. Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic week, and we'll see you again next week. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.